The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
And welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the High-Low Sports Podcast. On this Wednesday evening, we appreciate you all for joining us here live, or if you're checking us out, one of your favorite places to catch podcasts later on in the week. It is always a pleasure to sit here and talk about what's going on in the wide world of sports with you all. It is DJ, joined, as always, by my co-host, Kelcey. And you know what, Kelcey? The Combine is in the rearview mirror. We had some risers, some fallers. We had a lot of fun, a record or two broken. And we got NFL free agency. The offseason is in full swing in the NFL. The season ends, but another one begins.
Yeah, it is my favorite time, and I believe it's your favorite time of sports seasons. Quietly in the background, and this doesn't involve the show today, but by the way, spring training, that's happening now. So baseball's right around the corner. But I couldn't leave that out. I always have to talk about pitchers and catchers. Reporting is one of the best phrases in all of sports, because it means baseball's right around the corner, and obviously now we've been a week through spring training. But that does also mean, like you said, the Combine is now done and dusted, and wow, that was exciting. Might have been one of the more exciting Combines in recent years, I gotta say. I think it was pretty exciting. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but yeah, I mean, now we're getting ready for free agency. Just had the franchise tags. There might have been some surprises, might not have been some surprises. Kind of depends on how you look at it. And after all of that, we still don't know what's happening with Justin Fields.
Not a clue whatsoever. We are in no inclination one way or the other. And by the way, basketball is getting into their home stretch as well. As we're a little bit about a month and some change away from the playoffs too. So it's heating up as well. And we got some fun times in the octagon coming up. But we can go into all of that. That's probably enough preluding. I think now's a good time as any to go ahead and jump right into the tip-off. And the tip-off, of course, brought to you by our friends over at SeatGeek. Use code BELLYUPSports. Get yourself $20 off your first set of tickets to whatever sporting event you may be wanting to go to, or concert as well too, for anyone who is a music fan out there as well as a sports fan. But you mentioned earlier, we'll go and just lead kind of into it. NFL Combine, we have officially wrapped up. Everybody has left Indianapolis. A very, very busy week for a lot of them, you can say. Some interesting storylines, some players making some names, some going down. So as you mentioned, though, I'm just going to go and start. We got ourselves a broken record. Xavier Worthy breaking the 40-yard dash record, which, I mean, it was bound to get broken eventually as well, but the fact that he actually pulled it off after nearly breaking it the first time is like, nah, I won't do it again. Go get the record at 4.21. Absolutely incredible sprint by Xavier Worthy, who, by the way, was also kind of projected to be a early second-round pick area as well, so he was kind of already in that territory as well. So we already knew he was going to run fast, but record-breaking fast was, I think, kind of surprising. But overall experience on the Combine, how are we feeling after the Combine?
I loved it. I think a lot of guys that needed to make a name for themselves made a name for themselves, and I think that's the important part here. I think obviously we have the top tier for each position, kind of just doing what they're doing. Caleb Williams obviously didn't do anything, but he was there. He was there. He was active with the guys running. That's great. On the flip side of things, you had Marvin Harrison not even show up for the meetings he was supposed to. And then in between, like you said, you had Xavier Worthy. You had performances by offensive linemen, defensive linemen, linebackers, safeties, corners that were just out of this world. I mean, then you had the tight ends getting the worst passes ever thrown to them. So top to bottom, I think this might have been the most entertaining Combine I've seen in recent years. That just didn't. Now, there wasn't anything crazy other than Xavier Worthy that I'm like, oh, wow, like there was with Jordan Davis. But then at the same time, there were some surprises. There was the slowest 40 I've ever seen a running back run. There was the slowest 40 I've ever seen a quarterback run. That's supposed to be athletic. And then offensive linemen were beating, many a guys 40 times. And that was probably the most shocking. I saw a guy with a mullet run a sub-5. I didn't expect that to happen.
That aerodynamicness, once he got going, once he got that slight little bit of Lucas Oil downhill, he glided right through that. That back 20, he was flying at that point. That Kentucky waterfall was in full swing. But mentioning the Combine, there's always some winners and some losers. So right now we'll go and take a look, go through a couple of guys that we thought stood out, some guys that either separated themselves or things along those lines. I'll go and start. The first guy I'm looking at, he was already going top 10, but I think he separated himself even more. I'm looking at the big boys. I'm going to look at Joe Alt, the tackle from Notre Dame. Him, Olu Fashanu, I believe is how I said. And then Talise Fuaga, even J.C. Latham. That tackle group was all I don't want to say cluttered because Joe Alt was still considered number one, but there's also maybe Olu, maybe Talise. They were all kind of bundled together. I think Joe Walt with his combine performance basically said, by the way, guys, I am number one, and then there's the rest of you. Standing almost 6'9", about 315, I believe. He looked like Joe Thomas the way he was moving out there. The drills, the pulling, everything he was doing, a really good 40 time. I think Joe Walt really separated himself in a very deep tackle class. I think he separated himself as like, all right, if you need a tackle, I should be the first guy off the board. You need a left tackle, I'm here. If you need a right tackle, well, too bad. Kick your current left tackle or right tackle. I'm the new left tackle in town. He's looking at the Chargers like, Rashawn Slater, you are that dude, but it's my turn now. Rashawn, you're going to the right side. Or he'll be like, all right, I'll go to the right side, but you're going to pay me like a left side. Either way, I think Joel had himself one heck of a comment. And as of right now, I feel like he's tackle number one with a little cushion too.
Yeah, I think I wholeheartedly agree with that. I mean, I will say, I think out of the offensive line, though, I got to go for Shanu as the guy that I think had a better combine, top to bottom. Like he had a heck of a performance in there. I'm saying nothing that Joel did was bad. Let's be very clear about that. It's not like we talked about this with oh goodness, I can never remember. I can't remember his name right now, but Purdue defensive end now plays for the Chiefs a few years back, who did nothing wrong in his combine, did everything right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it's the same kind of thing. Joel did nothing wrong, but I think Fashanu or Fatanu, sorry, was just had a much more surprising combine, and that's I think the impressive part here, at least at that position. But he's not my winner. Let me be very clear. My winner is actually Brandon Fisk from Florida State. I think from his overall performance, and I kind of talked about it early on in this process, back when I talked about Florida State, why they should have a reason to maybe play in the playoffs. He was a big part of that. I mean, we're talking about 4.78 40 for a defensive tackle, um, untouched. Nobody's ever even come close to that realistically. 33.5-inch vert, 9 foot 9-inch broad jump, and a 4.37 short shuttle, and then that's better than Aaron Donald's combine, which at the time was a record for defensive tackles. So the dude had put out what he needed to put out to make himself a potential first round draft pick, maybe even a top 12 type of pick. Depends on kind of what's needed there. And I'm sure we'll talk about what's needed in that later on down the road in this process. But yeah, I'm going to go Brandon Fisk as my big winner here for the weekend.
He had himself one heck of a performance. And I think he definitely upgraded his stock quite a bit there as well. He definitely stood out amongst the crowd there. So,
all right, Braden Fisk. I said his first name wrong.
Yeah, of course. I'm going to actually now jump ahead to the polar opposite. I'm going to go to the receivers, and I'm going to go to one that I looked at, and there wasn't really a receiver that had a bad combine, really, that I think of, like someone that was thought highly of. But the one who surprised me, I'm going to go with Ladd McConkey out of Georgia. I did not expect him to run a 4.39. I expected him to be, for what you can blame it on his pigmentation, I don't care. I expected him to be the quicker than fast type. I didn't expect him maybe 4.5, something like that as well. Like when you watch him play, he doesn't necessarily glide away from people. He toasts them, but he doesn't run away. But looking at his numbers, he had the same combine performance as Chris Olave, really, as far as like the 40-yard dash time and all of that, which that was very surprising. I think when you factor in, when you watch him play, you don't think of him as a 4.39 guy. The fact that he added that to his repertoire, I think that makes him maybe even a late first round pick. I think he might have propelled himself into that conversation where if the Chiefs get him, we're all going to be like, oh, great. Just wonderful if he's going to be there at 32. So I think Ladd McConkey had a performance, and we all knew Gesundheit running up and down the line too. We know about his hands. We know how he glides. We know the route running. He does all of those things well. We already knew that. We just got to see that reinforced. And now you add in the ability to go along with that as well. So I'm gonna give Ladd McConkey a tip of the hat there because he has a little more juice than I expected.
That was shocking. I can't lie. I've watched him run away from SEC defenders pretty much his whole entire career, including Auburn defenders that are in the league now. I still didn't think he was that fast. I didn't think he was that quick. What is it? The line drill.
Yeah.
One of my favorite drills to watch with receivers. We talked about this a lot during the event while we were watching it and the replay. Watching the different methods for a receiver to come at it. And the one he trips on was actually probably one of the smoothest line runs I think I've ever seen from a receiver. And the last pass was so bad he somehow just couldn't corral it and tripped up on it on the ball itself, and then still was done faster than pretty much anybody else. I think Ladd McConkey had a great performance, and I really feel like he set himself up for I feel like a really nice position there. Speaking of receivers, and I'm just going to ask this question: Do we need to say the obvious one here for winners?
Well, there's a very obvious one that we already mentioned as well, so we don't have to say that one, but
We don't have to say Xavier Worthy. Xavier Worthy, obviously, big winner here.
Hmm.
Good. I'm going to his teammate and former Lad McConkey teammate, by the way, Adonai Mitchell.
he blew
Wow.
it up.
I think it's safe to say he's a top 5 receiver in this class. Depending on how you rank it, potentially top 3. It's tough. You kind of look at this list and you obviously have Malik Neighbors. Sure. Okay. You obviously have the one, Marvin Harrison Jr. Who's 3? Who can you honestly say put on a better performance other than Xavier Worthy, but then coupled it with the play that's not named Roma Dunze? And I guess Roma Dunze automatically takes 3, and that's where I run into the issue here is I can't make him 3, but I really want to make him 3. I think Adonai is just he had a fantastic performance.
So as of right now, where Adonai Mitchell for me is he would be right there. He would be the pinky that just popped up. He's for me receiver 4, just edging out Brian Thomas by really a very small amount because the fact that their 40-yard dash times were so similar when you didn't. I think we can get into this another time. I won't get into a full scouting breakdown of the two, but Adonai Mitchell had an incredible performance. I did not expect him to have a top 3 40-yard dash time for receivers.
He was supposed to be the fast receiver from Texas, by the way. Well, he was fast. I'm not taking that away, but still, Xavier Worthy turned out to be, oh my God, fast. And then, yeah, I mean, look, I feel like he's just he's going to be the slept on receiver. And I hope he doesn't go the route of Jalen Hyatt, who was, kind of rocketed there at the end in that last year to get a high draft pick. And then obviously ended up at the Giants, who didn't use him enough last year. I hope that's not the case for Adonai Mitchell, but I do think, honestly, he's a big winner for receivers this year.
I would say if he doesn't go in the first round somehow, the Panthers on the first pick of the next day should sprint that card to the commissioner so fast. Get Bryce Young a weapon like that. Like, oh my goodness, that would make everything that much better. You would have a first round pick without having a first round pick at that point. He would be 100% in. You know what, we be aforementioned, not to mention the quarterbacks. Half of the top 6 didn't actually participate. So, and I think the ones that did participate were really awesome. I think every quarterback that participated did something well in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take the one that I think isn't getting talked about as much, besides by me. I'm looking at Bo Nix, who I thought had an underrated combine. Did other guys have better? Sure. Like you could say Michael Penix's was better. You could say JJ McCarthy's was better because they were ripping it a little bit more. Where Bo was he wasn't ripping it quite as much. He showed the ability on the deep ball to get it up and down. We saw what we needed to see from him, I thought, too. Like his skill set was never going to be blow away the combine, but he showed it. I think he's going to be hindered by the play calling at Oregon when people scout him because there were so many screens that were within 4 yards of the line of scrimmage and underneath. Like 30% in his 2 years were within 4 yards, I think it was, which is either that or they chucked a 30-yard seam route, which he hit pretty well. I think his pro day, what I want them to do for him is I want them to put him on the move. I want them to show off his ability to throw while moving because he is very, very good at that. I know everyone's going to think Zach Wilson's roll out left and throw it back right thing. I don't need that now. I just want to see like roll out, hit the crosser, roll out, hit the corners and things like that. But I thought Bo Nix had a really good combine, straying away from the obvious ones because we know which quarterbacks really showed out in particular. But I think Bo Nix did nothing to hurt himself, honestly, as well. And I think he's a first-round pick. I would have him at Q. I think he should be a first-round pick. I know everyone wants to hate on Bo Nix because they remember the Bo Nix experience that was coined by this podcast as well, and he earned it at Auburn, for being honest. But I think at Oregon, he did a good amount to shake that. There were 3 losses while he was at Oregon. Not one of them did you chalk up to the Bo Nix factor. There was
2
losses to Washington, which we chalk up to the Michael Penix factor more than anything. And then Georgia being friggin' Georgia. Like, I don't get – sorry.
Yeah. Sorry you ran up to a buzzsaw. My bad. No, I think you're right. I think Bo Nix, I think he's going to be faulted not just from the Oregon play calling, but also you go back to the Auburn play calling.
5 offensive coordinators in 5 years, I think.
And on top of that, the route combinations he was asked to throw weren't route combinations. They were literally a go route and a backside dig, and or you have a 10-yard out and a go on the outside. Like there was just always a go route in the repertoire, and then 2 guys running routes, and then the rest of them doing whatever they were doing because they weren't running routes, that's for sure. And nobody was protecting him either. And that's the big thing that I think he has experienced what it's like to not have an offensive line, which was what made him so good and why going to an offense like Oregon was perfect for him. But I also think from an NFL standpoint, that also helps you as a coach to kind of look at it and be like, oh, I actually feel pretty comfortable at him running my offense because I know if it's not there, he's going to take the check down route. And what's our biggest complaint about Josh Allen? He gets too greedy and doesn't take the check down route. He has all the arm talent, but doesn't take the check downs. That's a big complaint with a lot of quarterbacks that have arm talent. Patty just got to that point in the last 3 or 4 years here. And obviously he's only been in the league for 6, 7 years, but still. I mean,
he's got some hardware since he started doing it.
Yeah, once he did it, look what they're doing now.
0 playoff losses since he started doing that, really.
Yeah, but I think Bo Nix, I think you're right. I think Bo Nix has played himself 4th, 5th, depending on how you rank him. Best quarterback here. Going to be probably the first round draft pick here. Just if for no other reason to get a fifth year option from a team. But yeah, I think, if you guys watch our Tier Tuesdays, my opinion on where I think Bo Nix falls in the grand scheme of the NFL. Which if you haven't, spoiler alert, it's he's a ready-made pro. I think he's going to come in and be able to handle an offense pretty well. Yes, he has all the experience in the world. He's 30 years old. Not really 30, but he has 17 kids. I'm just kidding. Anyways, but yeah, no, I think he had a great combine. But talk about quarterbacks. Obviously, you talk about the one that showed off the most. We have the record-breaking 72-yard bomb. Not really record-breaking, but just insane with Joe Milton. But he's not my winner for the quarterbacks. I'm not saying this guy's going to be a first-round draft pick, but I think he has an opportunity in the late rounds to make an impact and make a squad and be a quality player. And if you need to, he can come and make plays. I'm going Devin Leary. I think Devin Leary is the guy that probably impressed me the most, just because NC State had a lot of good runs under him. He had 3 years there in NC State. They were 3 great years for that program. Yes, they were a big run team, but that's not to sell him short. He made all the right throws. Goes to Kentucky, surpasses, comes in after Will Levis. Obviously, nobody's really thinking about Kentucky this year. Oh, by the way, they just quietly sneak themselves into a great bowl game this year. Better bowl game than Auburn did this year. So, I mean, I got to watch that. Obviously, he did have, again, another great running game. There's a theme I'm putting together here, by the way. Give him a great running game. He can make all the passes he needs to make in the pros. And you saw that in the combine. You saw the out routes. You saw the goes. You saw everything. There were a couple passes that get away on an out route. It's the hardest pass in the league, going from the opposite hash to an out 10 yards away. I say 10 yards, but 10-yard out route. It's like a 40-yard pass in reality. Most people don't think about. It's one of the hardest passes to make, and yet he only missed one, and that was a little high for a short receiver. You kind of just like, okay, I could live with that. If you're gonna miss that way. Don't miss, short and inside. This is never where you want to miss. L'Jarius Sneed has to take it to the house every single time. But yeah, no, I think Devin Leary, from a quarterback standpoint, I think he had a big win. Again, I'm not saying he's going to be a first-round guy. I'm not saying he's going to be a second-round guy. But in a late round, your team like the Saints who need a quarterback, why not? Why not give Devin Leary an opportunity? Ian Book didn't work out. Carr didn't work out.
You're stuck with Carr, though. So
yeah, you're stuck there. You're stuck with baby Jameis, I guess. But
he's a free agent too.
Why not give a third opportunity to a young kid who has every opportunity to show you that he's a good quarterback? Or heck, send him to the Chiefs and let him sit behind Patty. That's fine too. Patty would be more than happy to sit there and be like, yeah, I got a great kid to learn behind me. He's not going to surpass my arm, so Patty's comfortable. But at the same time, Leary gets to see from a great offensive coordinator and a great quarterback right now and see what they can do, and then maybe transition to a second team. And I think you said this when you talked about him. He might be the quarterback that's better at the second team he goes to. And that's true. I think that's not a bad option to be, though. You're 4 years of quality learning time, and it's something that used to happen all the time in the pros. If you guys don't remember, most of the quarterbacks that have the 2 quarterbacks that have won a Super Bowl for the Broncos both came from the Colts. They weren't first team for the Colts. Brett Favre, Green Bay was not his first team. Steve Young, the Niners were not his first team. Like, there's a theme there, guys, and there's something to think about that. Maybe we don't have to get a microwave quarterback every single time, and I think Devin Leary has an opportunity to prove that.
Absolutely. And if he is like that third round pick too, he might only have to sit for like 2 years and then in spot duty. Then he comes a needy team's like, we'll bring you in to compete. And then suddenly he runs away with it. Like he could very easily just run away with it. But
Or, Dak Prescott injury happens, not to Dak, but similar to the Dak situation where late round draft pick, middle round draft pick gets an opportunity because Romo goes down, doesn't give up the job.
never looks back. But we've talked a lot about the winners, so we'll keep it short and sweet with the losers because we don't like to say anyone is a loser necessarily with the combine. But is there anyone who had a bit of a rough combine performance for you that you think maybe didn't quite help themselves as much as you'd like?
Braylon Trice, defensive end out of Washington. That just wasn't good. Came in light from what he was at. He was 245 in Washington as a defensive end, came in 30 pounds lighter than that. What? I'm sorry. That should never happen whatsoever. Oh, no, sorry. He was 275 at Washington, came in at 245. My bad. I read that wrong. But yeah, had a slow 40, didn't really give you much juice there. It just kind of looked like he was in a hangover from being in the national championship game and kind of just took the last month and a half off. Which, if you did, okay, go show out at the pro day. But like from the combine standpoint, this is your big showcase. Makes a couple. Thank God you go to Washington because you're going to have a whole bunch. You're going to have all 30 scouts there or 32 scouts there at the pro day. But still, it's not a good look to say the least.
I'll say it probably hurt the chances of being like a first round top 40 pick for sure. I think now he's probably gonna be like a late second round, third round guy because I think the game is still there and his athleticism and size wasn't a big thing, but like you said, that's a big drop off too. So we'll have to see what that does. But for me, the one I'm going to look at, excuse me, I'm kind of looking across the board, and I think there wasn't really a bad one. There wasn't like oh my God, or anything like that. But I'm going to go with Cameron Kitchens, the safety out of Miami. He wasn't bad by any means. I just think some of those safety drills, he looked a little bit stiff. And then the 40-yard dash time did not do me any favors. I wasn't expecting him to run a 4.3. But I think running those 4.6s, I believe it was, and the higher 4.6s, I think didn't help him a lot. Still probably a top 3 safety off the board. Still probably a second round, second day pick. Still going to make a team. Still a good player. Not faulting him. But I was hoping in a safety class where it's not getting a lot of notoriety, maybe there'd be like an athletic, something that sticks out, or like a broad jump or a vertical jump or the 40, just something where it's like eye catching to kind of get a little more eyes on the safety class for him. For him especially, who I think we don't have graded now, but he might be safety number 1 for us now. We'll see. I haven't got that far into it.
1, 2, 3 potentially.
Yeah, like him, Newbin. There's some other guys in there, but I expect him to run just a touch faster as well, just from what I see when I watch him, which that's kind of a good thing. That means you play fast. But I'm hoping that's not just I'm hoping there's not a lack of athleticism there. If he runs at his pro day, runs a 4.57, all is forgotten basically at that point too. So he has plenty of time to work on that as well. But either way, he's gonna make someone very happy with in day 2, guaranteed. But
oh yeah, for sure. And also, by the way, his 40 time tied worst for safeties at the combine this year. So it wasn't pretty. But like you said, 11 interceptions to his name. I mean, that speaks for the play on the field speaks for itself. Miami was not a good team. He was a bright spot on that team. So I think that's obviously there. I'm going to throw one more out there because this guy, again, kind of similar to the Devin Leary situation where it's a later type of guy, already projected a second day type of guy. That's Kalen King, corner out of Penn State. Again, you talk about a slow 40 time, 4.61 for a corner.
He is now a safety.
Yeah. I mean, really, you look at that. That's, I mean, not great whatsoever. Came in a little light. Like I said, already projected was a guy in the second round. Probably one of those guys that fell into a little bit of hype because Penn State had a good time. But yeah, I mean, this is an unfortunate situation where you're just like, I really hope he's I hope he didn't ruin his chances. I hope he has a good pro day because second day doesn't leave you a whole lot of fall down room there. If you're not landing on the second day, you got 2 rounds on the third day, 3 rounds on the third day to hopefully land somewhere. That's not a promising situation there.
The payout to going from a second, third round pick on day 2 to a 4 through 7 on day 3, like the pay drop you're missing out on too. Like that pay scale drops quite a bit. So
you go from I'm going to use Brock Purdy as an example. You go from as low as Brock Purdy type of contract to as high as a Dak Prescott rookie contract, which at the time was $950K. So, I mean, you're talking rookie minimum here, which is, I think this year, $875.
Something along those lines. Either way, hopefully he's able to have a pro day where he could bounce back just a little bit as well. But that's going to do it here for the combine winners, losers, and those who showed out here in the top off. That's now going to take us to Kelcey's second favorite part of every show. That is the main event. And for the main event, we're going to stick with the league, and we're going to stick in the we're going to stick with the offseason as well. And we're going to take a look at franchise tags as the deadline is passed. And a handful of teams got the tag as well too. We'll go down a few of the notable ones. We got Josh Allen the Jaguars pass rusher, Josh Allen. We got Brian Burns, pass rusher for the Panthers, who they could have traded for 2 first-round picks less than a year and a half ago. We got Kyle Duggar, the safety for the Patriots. We got T. Higgins, receiver for the Bengals. Jalen Johnson, corner for the Bears. Michael Pittman, receiver for the Colts. L'Jarius Sneed for the Chiefs. And Antoine Winfield for the Buccaneers. And all of them non-exclusive franchise tags as well, too. So as you take – was that?
Let's say, except for one. You mentioned Kyle Duggar, the Patriots. He got a transition tag, which is a little bit different. It gives you the top 10 average. And then if he does end up negotiating with another team, because it's non-exclusive like that, but if he does get another team, they don't get compensation, unlike everybody else gets 2 draft picks. So a little weird for the transition tag for the Patriots, but that, hey, they go that route out of nowhere.
Yeah, very interesting though. See, thank you. All those exclusive tags as well. So Kelcey, I'm just kind of curious, looking at those, who are you surprised that did get the tag? Which one of these stand out like, oh, they tagged him? Interesting.
I think, I'll be honest, I think the Colts was surprising. I might be taking yours. I'm sorry if I am. And the biggest reason why is the last time they used the tag was on Pat McAfee 11 years ago. I think that's crazy. I didn't think it was going to be on Pittman. I know he just came off 2 1,000-yard seasons. He's your number 1 receiver, 109 catches last year. But I thought for sure they were going to be able to get a deal done. So it surprises me that they went the route, and especially going the route of non-exclusive and instead of an exclusive tag, because I thought that this is because they're in the realm of a contract conversation. Exclusive would have been the way to go there. But yeah, I a little strange with that one. Kind of that's my biggest surprise, if you will, of the franchise tags. It's a small one, but it's just, I mean, I get why they did it. It's just, it is out of the norm for the Colts organization for sure.
Absolutely. Very interesting there. I do think part of it was basically just hey, we're going to get this deal done. We just ran out of time and we're not going to let you hit the open market. Although at the same time too, they probably looked at it you know what? If someone's going to give us 2 1s for you and pay you, okay. But I think that's kind of showing with the receiver class we have coming out. Nonetheless, too, no one's going to pay that much, considering you're going to find Adonai Mitchell in the first round. You're going to find Xavier Worthy in the second round, legit Leggett, Lad McConkey. There's so many receivers coming out. That's why I think we saw that as well. But I'm going to actually go with L'Jarius Sneed, the non-exclusive for the Chiefs as well. And it's not even that he doesn't deserve it. I'm more or less surprised that they didn't give it to Chris Jones, honestly. And I know they probably couldn't give it to Chris Jones, but at the same time, it's
no.
That's a lot of money that's going to go between him and Chris Jones. I'm wondering, is the plan to trade L'Jarius Sneed at this point? That's what I'm almost wondering, if they tagged him to trade him because they didn't want to lose him for nothing. Because they got to pay Trent McDuffie coming up soon.
I'll say that is a bit confusing. I can't lie. The pay scale you mentioned can't tag Chris Jones. $22 million would have been the defensive tackle position, versus corner 19.8 is what they're getting for the franchise tag there. Yeah, but it does surprise. I mean, I guess it surprised me in the fact that you should have tagged Chris Jones, but maybe not so much in the fact that you still need a corner. It's not like he's a bad corner by any means. So I don't know
exactly. Now maybe they couldn't tag Chris Jones. I haven't looked too far into that as well, but it's just interesting because they got to pay him, or they're going to let him walk in free agency to test the market. That's just a lot of money. So I feel like it was a tag to trade, but it is very interesting to see there as well. But
by the way, you want to know a really interesting fact about these tags that I found when I was doing this? Josh Allen, the edge rusher, if he was classified as a defensive end, which is what he's supposed to be, that's what his position is on everything, he would have made $21.3 million under the franchise tag. They instead list him as a linebacker, so he gets paid $24 million for this next year. So he gets a $3 million pay raise because the Panthers are the Jaguars we want to get a deal with you. We want you to be our franchise player, so you get the defensive end. You don't get the defensive end designation. You get the linebacker designation. Brian Burns also, by the way, got a linebacker designation, which makes sense for Burns. But for Josh Allen, it was kind of wait, really? You're going to go linebacker with him? Okay, that's interesting.
Hey, they're not complaining. They get a little bit more money out of it too. I'm still surprised with what Carolina's doing, considering the Rams offered you 2 1s for Brian Burns and you said no. Then you had other offers for him and you said no, and now you're in a weird position of tagging and hoping at this point. So it's very weird how that's kind of fallen. But some interesting franchise tags. We'll definitely keep an eye on and see which ones are to be extended, which ones are be trades, and which ones are just like, meh, we didn't want to get rid of you yet. Kind of like we saw with a few last year. But speaking of some guys that weren't tagged, a few notable ones. Saquon Barkley, of course, after last year, he said to hit free agency. Giants didn't even use it on Xavier McKinney, so he's going to hit free agency. And then Miami's Christian Wilkins, the defensive tackle, not franchise tagged, and he is also hitting free agency. When I look at these, Saquon makes sense. They weren't going to tag him again at this point. I think that was part of the stipulation of that contract he signed last year. Xavier McKinney, I was a little surprised. I mean, maybe they're just really far apart on the deal. I don't know. I'm not sure. I think he's a fine safety, not top 5, but it's still fine. Like there's no guarantee you replace him. Christian Wilkins, he is really, really good. I think the problem was they weren't going to pay him $23 million or whatever the franchise tag would be for him, and he's not going to get. You're not going to pay him the Chris Jones money for really good. Yeah. When you have Jalen Phillips, you have to pay Jalen Ramsey. You are paying. Tua's going to have to get paid. Like Miami's just they don't have them. They're running out of money. They don't have the money to allocate for everybody. So it makes sense. It's just kind of crazy. Someone as Christian Wilkins, who had such a strong last 2 seasons and is a kind of a pretty well-known name for interior pass rushers, is going to be out there for free. And curious to see who snags him up, if someone does overpay for him or if the market kind of flattens out, because $22 million a year might be a little steep, but if you can get him for like 14 to 16, you got yourselves a player for a pretty good price.
Yeah, I think it's the Xavier McKinney one. That's the surprise that missed out for me. And the biggest reason, the contract that they'd be signing, yes, sure, he may not be a top 5 safety, but you're only paying him $17 million a year. Given the new the increase in the cap space, you had more than enough money to pay that.
Oh, yeah.
It wouldn't have hurt. You're the Giants. You already had a terrible defense, but I also think that's why they didn't, is because they're like, well, you were part of an awful defense, so get out of here. We don't want you. I will never forget what Sean Shiver did to him in the Iron Bowl. As Shiver ran into the end zone. But you know what? I digress. But I think McKinney was he's a more than average safety. I'm not going to say he's top tier, but he's more than average. So I'd say he's probably a top. Look, there are 20 teams out there that would say, I'll take that guy every day of the week. There's probably 12 teams out there that'd be like, we got a guy and already there. The Giants aren't a team that already has a guy there. So that's what surprises me. It's like, we kind of go back to the Baker situation a few years ago, where it's like Baker wasn't a bad quarterback by any means, middle of the road, but you're not really trying to trade out unless you can get like an absolute opportunity. The Giants didn't have they don't like, who are you going to go get that's going to be better than Xavier McKinney right now? Because right now there's not a whole lot of guys on the free agency market as far as safeties go that would be a better option than Xavier McKinney. And that's what's confusing to me.
100%. It's definitely going to be. We'll see. It's interesting to see what they have in mind there. I'm really curious what they have in mind with that move. But we kind of talked a little bit about it. We're going to preview it now as well. There's going to be a lot more we'll talk about next week. But now that we know who's franchise tag, who's not, we got an idea of who's going to be in free agency. There's some good names in there. Tyron Smith is going to be out there. Chris Jones, as we mentioned. Saquon Barkley, Calvin Ridley. They got some really good names. One thing I do want to highlight too is it's a good year to need a running back, because you got Derrick Henry out there. Austin Eckler looks like he's out there. Saquon Barkley is out there. Josh Jacobs is now out there. Like, if you need a running back and you're willing to go like 2 years, 15, 20 million, something like that for one, however the deal may work out, there's some really, really good options. Looking at some of those teams like Houston, they should be like, all right, Saquon Barkley, how would you like to come join us for a lot of money, considering we still have a rookie CJ Stroud and a bunch of young players. We have money to spend. If I'm the Patriots, I'm like, okay, my team is terrible, but I have $101 million in cap space. Would Derrick Henry like to come through to join Ramondre Stevenson or something like that? Yeah. Your Cowboys. Oh, yeah, Tony Pollard's out there too, by the way.
Yeah, I was going to say Tony Pollard, don't forget about that.
And I'm surprised your Cowboys didn't franchise tag him at the same time. But there's a lot of interesting options out there at running back as well. So that's what I'm kind of looking at ahead for free agency. Like, there's some running back options out there. If someone needs one, Zach Moss is going to be out there too. Like, It's a good year to need a running back.
Yeah, it really is. And I'll also go one step further. I don't think it's just a good year to get a running back. I think it's a good year to get any offensive backfield player that includes quarterback. Look, there's not a lot of them, but there's some quality names out there. I'm going to start with the number one guy on the list. While he might not be a free agent for long, but he is a free agent. He's coming off an Achilles injury, and that's Kirk Cousins. I think he is the number one free agent right now. I don't think there's any question about that. So that conversation needs to be had. We also have Russell Wilson getting told he's going to get released. So that's number two. Then beyond that, you got a lot of good backups there that can fill out a team. You got Jacoby Brissett, who can start in spots. You have Gardner Minshew, who showed he could start a whole season and it not be bad. Your team can be close to the playoffs. Now, I know DJ as a Colts fan, you're like, not again. But
as long as you have low expectations.
Low expectations, 7 wins a season, 8 wins a season. You probably feel pretty good about getting Gardner there if you need to. You also have Baker. Look, we just saw what Baker did with the Bucks. I think there's a lot of opportunity there in the entire offensive backfield. And, there's a lot of quality to be had there. And going beyond that, look at edge rushers, man. Like, wow. Zadarius Smith is back on the market. Andrew Van Ginkel, which, by the way, if you didn't see what he did last year, you're missing out. Technically, Patrick Queen can be an edge rusher if you want him to. He is a linebacker technically, but he could fall in that category.
Front seven player for sure, yeah.
Yeah, then you have Bryce Huff from the Jets, who's a top 20 guy. Leonard Williams, who technically is still a defensive end, but still qualifies. You have Danielle Hunter, who might be the number 3 overall free agent right now. And then a guy that's unsung, and I think a big part of what Houston did last year, and that's Jonathan Greenard. He's a free agent. And that's a guy that a lot of teams could be looking at trying to bolster. I look at the Eagles like, hey, why not go get an opportunity for this guy? Maybe the Houston Texans re-sign him. I don't know. But there's some really good players out here, and it's kind of surprising.
And we didn't even mention, arguably, you said Kirk Cousins was probably free agent number 1. If he's number 1, we didn't even mention number 2 and Chris Jones as well, who D-tackle, DN. Like, it's a loaded free.
I think our position of need, I should say, like quarterback is being a little higher than defensive tackle.
Exactly. Like, there's a lot of really, really good options. We're going to talk more about that next week as free agency officially kicks off next Wednesday, but the quote-unquote legal tampering period, whatever you want to call it, starts Monday. So we'll have kind of an idea of what we'll be looking at there with next week in free agency, and we'll have to see how that will affect mock draft Mondays moving forward, as well as some of the other things, because we'll have kind of an idea with some of these teams here as well. But definitely want to tune in for that. Stick around for free agency preview. More of that coming in next week. But that's going to wrap up here the main event that we have for free agency preview. That's now going to take us to Kelcey's favorite part of every show. That is Crunch Time, brought to you by Outlier. Go to outlier.bet /HighLowSports. Get yourself a free 7-day trial to bet smarter, not harder. And you could do that. And you could also go and check out DJ's best bets when it pops up. Follow our social pages for that. See if you can win a few dollars. Last week we talked about last DJ's best bets. We did some UFC. We hit on 7 out of 8, I believe it was, including the parlay that hit. And DJ actually left home with some money, including some random ones that I didn't post too. So this week we're going to talk UFC again. UFC 299, not quite 300, 299 coming up in Miami. I'm going to call it a relatively loaded fight card from top to bottom. If you look at every single fight includes somebody with a number next to their name. Most of them include somebody with 2 numbers, which means they would be ranked in the top 15. As I go, and that's just from the prelims. We're not including the early prelims. We're talking all the prelims. So first prelim, you got number 13 versus a relatively newer fighter who is actually favored -255, and Kyler Phillips over 13 Pedro Munoz. So that's considered Kyler Phillips's coming out party. Welcome to the top 15 is what they're anticipating. Keep an eye on that one. But that's a plus money on a number 13 ranked guy. And we got Gamrot taking off Rafael Dos Anjos, number 6 versus number 11. RDA, the epitome of OG, OG professional, has been around since I would say a Fortnite. He's been around, but he's around before Fortnite was even a thing. He's been around that long. He's a plus 275 underdog but going against the young Polish fighter who's been making some waves. Kaylin Sermira taking on Macy Barber, number 4 versus number 6. You're splitting hairs there, as you would expect with a number 4 versus number 6. You got a plus 140 and a minus 170. Then the prelim main event, if you will, like the main prelim event. Curtis Blades, number 5 heavyweight, taking on Jalton Almeida, number 7 heavyweight, minus 112 to minus 108. That one, you're not betting a winner. You're going to maybe try and bet a method of victory and hope. Because I don't know if you want to pick a money line there. It's
funny with Curtis Blades. He was always the bane of my existence in all the UFC video games. Because I always been a heavyweight guy. I always have to. But yeah, Blades has always been the bane of my existence.
And he's the bane of many guys' existence too. It'll be curious to see if Almeida could break through and maybe get an upcoming title shot once heavyweight starts to figure it out. But we'll have to wait and see on that one. That should be a very good fight. Kicking off the pay-per-view, Piotr Yan taking on Song Yadong at the best name in combat sports, by the way.
Yes.
And it got number 4 taking on number 7, which surprisingly close odds, 135 minus for Yan, plus 114 for Yadong. Though that's surprising when you look at it. Maybe a year and some change ago, Piotr Yan was considered one of the best in the world and was a champion at 135 not too long ago as well. It was having very, very close fights with previous champ Aljamain Sterling. Very, very interesting there because he's lost a few in a row, but still a very dangerous fighter. Gilbert Burns, number 4, taking on number 11, Jack Del Maddalena. God, I can never say his name. Interesting part there, though, is number 4, Gilbert Burns, plus 100 underdog. So they're coming off of a couple of rough losses, but I think they're expecting this to be Della Maddalena's coming out party. Next, we got number 13, Kevin Holland.
You know what's funny about that? They gave win probability for both guys dead even, 50-50.
They're like, that's a really, really good matchups, and we're not even to the top. We're just hitting the top 3 now. We're just getting started. We got number 13, Kevin Holland, taking on unranked newcomer Michael Venom Page. Anyone who's watched Michael Venom Page, he's a stud outside the UFC. For context, he flying kneed a guy, cracked his skull, and threw a Pokeball at him. That's as part of his celebration. He's absolutely dangerous, incredibly in space, incredibly dynamic. Kevin Holland, very good in space, and will talk ridiculous amounts of trash in the middle of the fight. So that should just be entertaining in the most uncomfortable, weirdly way possible. That's going to be fun.
I'm going to get a trash talk and a Pokeball in the same fight. That's all I care about.
You know it, and Michael Page will do both of those as well. He will trash talk, and he will hold his hands down, flail, showboat, for better and for worse. He has gotten caught for, but it should be one heck of a fight. Main event, we got Dustin Poirier. A lot of people know Dustin Poirier taking on Benoit Saint Denis, number 3 versus number 12, with Poirier as an underdog at plus 142. You have Saint Denis from France at minus 170. Fun fact, he just started training 6 years ago, and now he's the number 12 ranked fighter in the world and is possibly on the cusp of a potential title shot, depending on if he wins this one. First time Dustin Poirier has been an underdog since Conor McGregor 2, I believe. And that was in like 2020, if I'm not mistaken. It's been a minute since he's been in that realm before. So
talk about started at the bottom there. Jeez.
Yeah.
Man, that's an impressive run. 6 years of training, and now he's here.
Wasted absolutely no time. Former France Special Forces, I believe, as well, too. And then that takes us now to the main event. Sean O'Malley versus Marlon Chito Vera. Number 2, second time they fought. First time Chito Vera won with a first round stoppage. Those who remember, there was like Sean had like a weird leg injury that his leg kept rolling underneath him, and then Chito was able to finish him on the ground. You ask Sean, he's still undefeated. You ask Chito, who gives a you know what? The bantamweight title on the line, minus 218 for O'Malley as the favorite, plus 180 for Vera as the underdog. This one, if I'm betting on it, potential spoiler for DJ's best bets to come out on Saturday. I don't know if I'm going to pick a winner in this one, but I am going to take a look at when the finish is. I haven't checked the numbers yet. I'm going to look ahead. If it's like less than 2.5 or more than 2.5, it's less than 3.5. Both guys like to kill, for lack of better terms. They like to kill their opponent. They are very good at it. And so that one I might be taking. If it says the end inside the distance, 100% taking that one if the odds are good. But we're going to take a look and see when the round ends in that one. But a very good fight card, arguably top to bottom, better than UFC 300 coming up, which 300 just sells itself in its own number. But those ones should be very interesting. I'm looking forward to this.
By the way, the win probability in that O'Malley fight, they're giving 66% to Sean O'Malley, which seems a little extreme considering his loss comes to the exact guy he's fighting.
It is very interesting as well. But since that point, he has gone on an absolute tear and has smoked a lot of ranked guys and became the champion as well. So, and I feel like the nature of the loss has a lot of people look at that like, oh, it was a little unusual. But either way it happened, but I'm looking forward to it. It's a very good fight card. It's going to be fun, and keep an eye out for DJ's best bets. I think I'm going to muster up something and hopefully can win a little bit of money on this one too.
Sounds a lot like an Alabama type of loss. It's a loss. Still gets you into the playoffs.
Yeah, we don't need to drag Alabama into this because that'll leave us onto a tirade as well. But speaking of tirades, if you like to see us go on mini tirades, be sure to check out Mock Draft Mondays and Tier Tuesdays Draft Edition every Monday and Tuesday leading up to the NFL Draft. Mondays, you'll be joining me and Kelcey for some of them as well as we go through 1 through 32. We go and make the picks for the teams depending on how they're going to fly or fall, depending on rumors for agencies and just what we're feeling like at that particular point. And then on Tuesdays, you'll want to join Kelcey, and sometimes myself for Tier Tuesdays, looking at the draft by position groups. Check out our most recent quarterback one. And then, we have some good ones coming up. So it's definitely some fun getting you completely ready for the NFL draft coming up in a month and some change.
Yeah, we can't wait for that. And by the way, just so we're clear today and not, I'm going to say this every episode I do Tier Tuesdays again. It's not a step. It's like a 1 through 5 ranking. I make it a little fun with it. If you guys checked out yesterday's episode, you already know what I'm talking about. There was a lot of entertaining tiers for that one as well. And I'm still waiting to speak to somebody's manager. So if you haven't checked that out, go over to the Belly Up YouTube and check out the quarterback draft edition of Tier Tuesdays. Every other one will be appearing on our YouTube page. So if you're checking us out on YouTube, just stay here for next Tuesday. You'll catch us there. So.
Absolutely. It should be fun. We definitely look forward to it. Let us know down below what you think of in those episodes, what you think of the tiers and what you think of the mock drafts as well. And let us know who you think is going to come out on top for UFC 299 this week and what bets you might be considering making. If you can legally bet. If not, then just tell me who you pick if you could. But we are not held liable for any of that. But we appreciate y'all for joining us here on the High Low Sports Podcast, and we will see you all again next week.